think it's important for those in any career to make sure that we start to see life as nonlinear, to decrease that anxiety, decrease that stress. Like, we need to re-examine our career trajectories to see them as nonlinear and maybe even pursue them as nonlinear. Maybe look for something that's nonlinear.
This is the Visible Voices podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Resa Lewis, an emergency medicine and lifestyle medicine physician, medical educator, designer, and your host. Today, I'm in conversation with Dr. Michelle Finkel. Now, the important thing for you to know about Michelle is that she's one of the first physician entrepreneurs I ever knew. 20 years ago, she started a business called Insider Medical Admissions. Insider Medical Admissions is a specialized consulting business that helps applicants navigate and improve their candidacy for medical school, residency, fellowship, post-bac programs, and dental school. Michelle and I met during emergency medicine residency in Boston at Harvard. She worked as faculty at Massachusetts General Hospital, where she earned numerous teaching and mentorship awards. She also served as assistant residency director. And this is important because she gained experience in reviewing applications, interviewing candidates, and making admissions decisions. So these were key skills that she gained that led to her next chapter. Michelle, welcome to the Visible Voices podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Resa.
So tell us about Insider Medical Admissions.
Insider Medical Admissions is a company that I started, it's over 18 years ago. So I act as a mentor, as an advisor, and I'll assist with strategy. I'll assist with editing, personal statements, applications, resumes, and then I also offer mock interviews.
Your website, Insider Medical Admissions, there's a tagline, get the Harvard secrets without the Harvard ego.
Harvard, and I mean, you were there too. Harvard, there were many wonderful things about Harvard, and some of the best people I ever met. My oldest friends were either from medical school or people like you from residency. At least when I was there was a lot of attitude. I mean, that was one of the things I really did not like about Harvard was there was a lot of ego. And so my tagline, the idea is, hey, I'm proficient, I have expertise, but I'm not going to be a blowhard in any way. And I tell my applicants that.
I want to go right to talking about Insider Medical Admissions and AI. Where is AI playing a role in your workflow?
I really don't use AI in my work. I don't want to use AI because my whole concept here is that I'm helping folks with original writing. And so I don't even use it for email for my clients because the whole, that kind of goes against the idea of we're trying to come up with writing that distinguishes someone from everybody else. And as much as I think AI can be fantastic, it's not very original. I mean, what I have seen it write, when I have used it, it's for, let's say, a personal email. I end up just getting rid of it because it's so bland.
I've heard you speak about your business model and what makes you different, because there are, some people describe it as competitors, but there are other companies doing what you're doing or seemingly offering the product you're offering.
Okay. I am very, what I would call high touch. In other words, I do everything. I conduct every single strategy session, every single mock interview. I edit every single document. So I'm not even sure there may be one or two people who are still like that out there. Most people end up recruiting other folks to help. And sometimes those folks are really talented or experienced, and sometimes they're not. And sometimes you don't even know who's working with you. For me, it's just me. I'm working with everyone. I like the work.
Yeah. And they're paying for a quality expertise product that's withstood time.
Now, of course, that means I'm not going to ever grow the business into some huge corporation, but I don't want to do that. And
what are your numbers? Meaning how many clients or how many applicants, over these almost 20 years?
I'm guessing by now I may be up to 1,500, 1,750, something like that. I mean, it's a lot by now. It's really a lot. Some people are repeat. This sounds crazy. I've even had somebody just reached out to me recently who was the child of somebody I had worked with. Yes.
I want to complete the AI thought I asked you about your use of AI. Do you have policies or rules or what you state up front with your clients with whom you work regarding what's allowed, what's not allowed?
I really don't. But I have to tell you, maybe I'm being arrogant. I think I would figure it out. And even if somebody sent me something with AI, I edit so aggressively that I think I would say, "Hey, this sounds really generic. Hey, I'm worried about this line. This doesn't really showcase your accomplishments well enough." I think I would pick it out, and direct them in the right way.
How do you do your own internal quality? Like you're now no longer in academics doing the interviews, reading the applications. How do you know that you're on with what you're advising?
It's a good question. I have several friends who are on medical school admissions committees and residency admissions. And I do text them quite a bit and say, I have a friend who's a residency director and say, "Hey, I have a question. I have this awkward situation. What do you think about this?" Obviously keeping the client completely anonymous. Or I have several friends who are on medical school admissions committees and say, "Can I just run this by you?" Or are you still running is the admissions committee still, is it organized still in this fashion? I'll kind of check that way. I do, reading as well, but mostly it's through one-on-one conversations or emails or texts.
It's almost, these are your personal board of directors or maybe your professional board of directors for your company. I really like this. You talk about the application to, we'll say, medical school is a persuasive process.
I feel really strongly about that. I see a lot of people writing the mistakes I see people writing narrative essays where they're telling stories. They're telling stories about, with, like, let's say, for example, patient anecdote. And the problem with a patient anecdote, for example, is that it's something that's very meaningful to one person, but it's hard to convey that meaning to somebody else. I joke, it's almost like a dream. When you have a dream, you think it's really important, then you go to tell somebody else and they're clearly bored with what you're talking about. A patient anecdote is a little bit like that. And also, I find it's a way for modest applicants to hide.
You have to talk about yourself. And that leads into something else you talk about, which is the humility trap.
Absolutely. And first of all, let me start by saying the worst physicians I have ever worked with or seen are the arrogant ones. So I'm not suggesting arrogance. Okay. The arrogant doctor is the one who ignores the nurse and the patient suffers. So I'm not suggesting that at all. What I tell people is state the facts. So I'm not saying to be arrogant, but there is definitively, and I notice this especially with women applicants, and interestingly, applicants who weren't born in the United States. I think men are generally socialized to be more comfortable talking about themselves, and we women are not. And so I notice this mostly, again, with women and those outside of the country, who are born outside the country. There's this need to be excessively modest. And I always tell people, you don't want to be overlooked.
We've talked about persuasiveness. We've talked about the humility trap, timing, and applying early.
Yeah, I mean, the medical school process in particular it's important to try to apply when it opens. The issue is that there's rolling admissions for many schools, not all schools, but many schools. And so I tell people it's sort of like an auditorium that opens. And if you're there at the front of the line, you're going to get a seat. If you're there at the back of the line, you may or may not get a seat. Also, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for an application to be verified. So that's where the AAMC checks to make sure that what you have is accurate. They take some time to sort of look through your application before it's sent to schools. So there's that lag time as well. So it's really important. I tell people, try to be on time. Now, if somebody doesn't have materials that are ready, it's not worth submitting something that's not in good form. And the question is, the person should have started earlier. If not, should they even wait an entire cycle to apply? Sometimes I recommend that.
So I'm really interested in you as the entrepreneur and as the business owner. How many team members do you employ? And you just mentioned about scaling up the business, but then you also have said you don't actually want to grow too big.
So I currently have an administrative assistant. And although I edit every single document, I have an editor now. We've been working together since 2018. So he really knows how I think. And he does the first pass. So everybody gets the benefit of him. But then I call it over editing. I over edit every single document on top of it. There were times where I had 4 or 5 editors and I was just giving less work to each editor. And I really realized that was more complicated. And also, frankly, I was really looking to streamline, and I had one editor who was just outstanding, and that's who I've kept. And luckily he's willing to take on a lot more work. In terms of how to scale or how big to scale, that's just been personal. I like doing the work. I've had people say to me, oh, you could do this to make you get the business bigger. You could do products. I actually like the services. I like working with, I mean, I worked with residents and I loved it back when we were at Harvard together. I'm an extrovert. That's one of my favorite things. So, to me, I could probably grow it bigger, but I just don't want to.
Is this a 365 24/7 or what are the busy seasons?
The busy seasons would be May because AMCAS opens in May. And then also over the summer tends to be busy. September is extremely busy because pre-dental and pre-medical students are doing their secondary essays and preparing for mock interviews. And residency applications are due around then. And then I would say October, November, December, still somewhat busy because of interviews. My quietest time is January, February, March.
Dentistry, like how are you qualified or how do you get the inside scoop on helping people get into dental school?
Dental school, there are a lot of similarities between dental school and medical school. The applications are extremely similar. The schedule is extremely similar. There's certain things I feel comfortable doing, for example, helping with edit a personal statement for dental school, whereas strategy sessions for dental school, I'll do if somebody asks me to do, but I don't do many of those.
Interviews and the interview process has changed. Everything used to be in person. I remember traveling all over the country for medical school interviews, residency interviews. So most interviews now are virtual. How has your coaching, teaching, mock interview style changed?
The approach is still the same. Again, distinguish yourself from everybody else, demonstrate how you're worthy, showcase your accomplishments. There's a whole learning curve to that, but it's something that we practice. I'm actually a fan of the virtual interviews. It saves folks a lot of money. It used to be really expensive. I also think that funky stuff that used to go on in some in-person interviews is less likely to go on in virtual interviews. So I know I was asked inappropriate questions like whether I had a boyfriend in one of my residency interviews. Ridiculous. I'm able to focus more on questions now and less on, make sure that you show up to the dinner the night before, things that make sure you arrive very early, things that really weren't part of demonstrating one's candidacy or furthering one's candidacy.
I'm really glad you brought up cost. This whole process is very costly. And people would make decisions on where to apply, where to travel based on what they could afford. I'm not asking for your price list. I am wondering how you consider this in terms of affordability and what you do to actually be able to serve people that might be lower income that actually do struggle with the affordability of the services you provide.
Okay, so thank you for that question. So first, let me say, in terms of my price list, I try to be extremely transparent. It's all on my website. I know with some websites, you have to call or email to get a price list. I don't do that. I'm very transparent. I just want to mention that, number one. I offer a huge discount for anyone who has an AAMC, which is the American Association of Medical Colleges, FAP. It's a financial aid program waiver. So folks apply for that. And by the way, it's something worth looking into because it decreases the cost of the MCAT of applications. In any case, anyone who can prove to me that they have a current FAP waiver, I offer a huge discount. It's relevant for a medical student. Just recently, the AMC extended it to residents as well, like within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
There is something for dental students as well. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. There's something that there's a different name for it, but yes, it's available for dental students as well. I don't believe it's available for fellows. And I don't think it's available for postbac applicants. And it's hard for me to really offer a discount without that kind of proof. I have a blog that I've been writing since almost the beginning of my business. So it has whatever that is, 18, 19 years of free information. And that's on my website. So someone can just go to my website and look under my blog and look at years and years and years of free advice.
Yeah. And if you were to put a price on that, what would you say just based on that info on the blog alone?
I'm not sure I can put a price on it, but somebody advised me once to take that and write a book. Just use all of the entries and write a book, which I just decided not to do. But
Michelle, when did you realize you had a voice and when did you start using that voice?
I realized that I had a voice and realized it when my business took off. And the reason I say that is that's when I had the autonomy and the flexibility that clinical medicine was not offering me. It was not affording me. And again, I loved clinical medicine in many ways, but especially emergency medicine, there's no spontaneity at all. You can't get out of a shift unless there's some horrible emergency. And there's very, very little autonomy. Emergency medicine's a wonderful field, but you don't choose whom you're working with, right? Neither patient-wise nor staff-wise. And you're contacting consultants who may or may not be pleased to hear from you. They're usually pretty not pleased to hear from you. You don't have a lot of control. And the business really has afforded me a tremendous amount of control that is fantastic for me, my personal life. And it's just been something that's just freed me.
So for audience members that maybe they're not planning on applying for med school or becoming doctors, but maybe they have people in their family, what's in it for them? Like, why should people listen to our episode?
Okay. So there's a journalist I was listening to. His name is Bruce Feiler, and he writes about the fact that we think of life as linear, but it's actually extremely nonlinear. He talks about lifequakes instead of earthquakes, things that we weren't expecting to happen that change our trajectory. I don't even think it has to be a life quake. It doesn't have to be some big change. But in general, life is very non-linear. And he talks about the fact that the discrepancy between our expectation of linear and our life as non-linear causes anxiety or stress. I agree with him. I think it's important for those in any career to make sure that we start to see life as non-linear, to decrease that anxiety, decrease that stress. Like, we need to re-examine our career trajectories to see them as nonlinear and maybe even pursue them as nonlinear. Maybe look for something that's nonlinear.
What can you share in terms of mistakes you've made along the way?
Oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes. The number one mistake I would say was not getting enough help. This has been an issue for me in many realms of my life. You have to get enough help. That was where I was trying to manage everything on my own, didn't have administrative assistance, didn't have editing, pre-editing help. There was a point where the business got so busy, I just had to stop taking new clients. At that time, I was using PayPal. And I had to just turn off my PayPal buttons. That was where I realized you cannot run a business doing everything. Okay, that was one of my big mistakes. There were others, just silly mistakes. I didn't understand very well how a website worked early on. I didn't get enough assistance, and I was having trouble with my website. It turned out some Russian travel organization was using my website in the background. I mean, just like all sorts of crazy things like that. I'm going to tell you something else. I think also the advertising, I really didn't know what I was doing. And so the advertising that I did, I was spending the same amount of money advertising as I was making with clients. I realized that at one point I was just throwing money into Google ads. And then I sat down after a year and did the numbers and realized this was a complete waste of time because it was equivalent to what I was making from it. So there were just a lot of silly things I just didn't know what I was doing at first. I don't have a business degree. I'd never had an entrepreneurial pursuit before. Having said that, it took years, but it finally came to a better culmination.
So for listeners that are interested in what you just shared about the lifequake rather than the earthquake and embracing that life is not linear and one's career is not linear, what are 3 microskills, 3 small intentional actions that people can take to start exploring this for themselves?
Okay, number 1 is I would find a mentor. I would find somebody who has done something outside of clinical medicine that you might be interested in and talk to them and figure out how they're doing it, how they're balancing it. That would be the first thing. I would say the second thing is I would talk to somebody outside of your career, in our case, medicine. I would talk to somebody in business or talk to somebody in the art world, something that's completely different. And because especially in medicine, there's a lot of groupthink. And I think it's helpful to get a completely different perspective. That will help you brainstorm. And then I think finally, I would sit down and actually write a list of your priorities. What are your life priorities? Is it spending time with your family? Is it exercising more? Is it a creative pursuit? I would write down what your 5, maybe it's even geographic where you want to be. I would write that down and then I would use that to mold what your extra clinical activity might be.
For listeners that want to follow your work, learn more, and maybe even access all those free blog entries,
I suggest you check me out at insidermedicaladmissions.com.
Dr. Michelle Finkel, thank you for joining me on the Visible Voices podcast.
It was wonderful, wonderful, Dr. Lewis.
The Visible Voices podcast amplifies voices in the healthcare, equity, and innovation spaces. Our team includes Dr. Giuliano DePortu and me, Dr. Resa E. Lewis. Find me at Resa E. Lewis, MD on social media or visit thevisiblevoicespodcast.com. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts and watch our episodes on YouTube. This podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect those of their employers or institutions. Guest appearances do not imply endorsement of any product, service, or organization. Information shared here is intended for general informational purposes only, reflects the time of recording, and should never substitute for clinical judgment or individualized medical advice. No physician-patient relationship is created by listening to or watching this podcast. Together, we're making healthcare more equitable, one visible voice at a time.